Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about depression. As always, I'm going to start with my usual disclaimer. I'm just here to chat, tell you my experiences, what I've dealt with, what I think about. This is informal but informational at the same time. Please feel free to ask any questions in the comments. Hit me up on social media if you have any questions. I know these topics do get heavy and uncomfortable sometimes, and sometimes we feel like we have no one to talk to about these serious issues. And so here I am, I'm open to talking about it. Depression is the first mental health issue I was ever diagnosed with. Today I'm filming on my bedroom floor and you can see some of the disorganization I have going on in my room. However, I wanted to film it this way because it shows part of what my depression looks like, and part of that is not really caring about anything sometimes, no matter what it is. And I'm not afraid to say that I am messy and have a lot going on that could be so much better than it is, especially the laundry situation back there. But anyway, back to the important stuff. Sometimes depression isn't what we always hear in the media. A lot of the time, it's not what we hear in the media, and I want to talk about that. I was first diagnosed with depression around 2010, which was the year my grandmother passed away, which was probably the catalyst for my depression. However, I wouldn't doubt that I was already experiencing it to a certain degree, but that really ramped it up, got me into the doctor, and started my mental health journey where I started learning about everything. But it would be my longest diagnosis. It was diagnosed as clinical depression. I don't remember getting re-diagnosed for any other depression, because there's things such as major depression, or I think it's called major depressive disorder now. Also, you could have bipolar depression, things like that. But as far as I know, clinical depression is what I was told I was had. Either way, I know I'm depressed due to my experiences, and that's okay. I don't take my mental health problems as something negative. I take it as my reality, and although my brain may not be working in the ways I want it to be, that doesn't mean it's a bad brain or that I'm a bad person or it's my fault or anything like that. And I hope any of you guys experiencing depression, whether it's full-blown an everyday thing or you're depressed because of an event happening, please know it's normal. Obviously, we all wish that mental health could just be perfect all the time, but that's not the case. And even if you have a mental illness, I don't like to say that's not normal, because enough people have it that it's a thing. It happens. It comes and goes, and sometimes it stays forever. And if it's a part of you, that doesn't mean you can't still have a good life. Because even though I've been depressed, it's now 2019, and I'm sure I was depressed before 2010, but at least a decade of my life for sure I've experienced this, and I'm still here, and I'm thankful that I am. But I can also understand why some people don't make it through and don't see past their demons. My depression is the reason why I first started therapy. At the time, the way professionals looked at my depression was that it was because of my grandmother's passing, and so they were really focusing on the grief and loss portion of things. However, as an adult now and still having depression, yes, her passing does contribute to it and I miss her very much, but clearly it's not just that. I also went to therapy in 2016, so the timeline of my therapy goes from late 2010, early 2011. I went for probably 6 months or so, And then I never went to therapy again all the way until about 2016, which is when I started going for my anxiety, but they still monitored my depression. And I'm back in therapy again now. And so from the 2016 portion, I was in therapy for one whole year, from approximately June, July of 2016 all the way through 2017. And I stopped therapy a few months after I had started Prozac, and that was for my anxiety. And then I stopped taking Prozac maybe 3 months after I stopped therapy, only because I personally didn't feel like Prozac was the right choice for me to continue for the full year dosage, and otherwise I felt like I had a grip on things. And then I started going to therapy again this year. I believe I started end of February, beginning of March was the first session I had, and I'm very happy and thankful that I started going again, because it really does help me be able to talk about things and not feel judged, and have a professional confirm and affirm the things that I'm feeling, and just know that it's a condition, it's not me, it's not my fault, and there are things you can do to mitigate it. And I do also talk about my anxiety in therapy as well, but again, this video is on my depression, so I'm focusing on that portion. However, my depression is very much triggered by my anxiety. I'll have a panic attack or an anxious moment, or just be in the anxious headspace, and it really starts to get you down. And I feel like that's when the depression really kicks in, because you start to notice how many things you're not doing because you're anxious. And it's really unfortunate sometimes that I've missed opportunities, whether it be a hangout, a job interview, a class, turning in an assignment. Did I say work? I think I said a job interview, but going to work, and then you realize that you're not being you, that you're not talking to your friends, that all the things that make you happy don't anymore. And I know that it's also a part of depression, and a lot of the symptoms overlap. And it is true, you really do start to lose interest. And when that happens, and my body physically no longer has the energy to be anxious, that's when the depression kicks in. Once I'm done being tense and stressing out and shaking, or just not having the mental clarity, my brain goes into depression mode. And I always say my mental health goes in waves of high points of anxiety diving down into low points of depression, and it just goes up and down, up and down. And every once in a while there's a semi-flat line in between. I also experience what is known as seasonal depression, which is with the changing of the seasons, lack of sunlight, things like that. From winter into spring, I do have a really hard time. I also have time during the fall and winter months, because that's when my grandma passed away, and a lot of the traditions my family held revolved around her during the holiday season. My birthday is also in February, and I've never really enjoyed my birthday. So there's a lot of heavy things going on at that time, on top of the changing of the weather, that causes seasonal depression, which is a real condition. I'm not just calling it seasonal depression because of the seasons. And I experienced that, as well as just depression overall. And that doesn't mean that I'm not happy and upbeat. I am often told that I'm a very positive person, and that when I speak about my depression and my anxiety, that you would never know that I'm very extroverted and I'm interested in doing things, and I show that I'm passionate and just gung-ho sometimes, but on the inside, and what you see in my room when I'm at home by myself isn't always what you see when you see me in the streets. And that's okay. Of course, we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and we're making good choices and healthy coping decisions, but it's okay that when I come home, I'm not completely fine. And depression isn't just sadness. Depression is not wanting to eat. It's being tired all the time. It's not having the ability to focus. That's one of the biggest things that I experience with my depression, is everything is really hard for me to concentrate on. I get very agitated and irritable. I'll forget what I'm thinking, saying, doing. I can drive somewhere and forget why I went somewhere. I can go on a walk and just end up who knows where, just so far away from home, just because I have no ability to focus. And those are in the deepest, most rough parts of my depression. And it's not like that all the time, and it's definitely gotten better, but it's not what you hear. Depression isn't sitting there being sad and sulking. It's sitting there with the same thought over and over again. Nobody cares about me. I'm worthless. I don't understand why I'm wasting my time. Everything is difficult to do, over and over again. And you may not necessarily feel sad. You can feel mad. You can feel happy and still be depressed. The sadness aspect, of course, does come into play, but that's not the only thing depression is. And it's really hurtful for those of us who experience it, for people to equate it to just a sadness or a choice that we can get over and that we can choose happiness instead, because there are times that we're happy and still depressed. So choosing happiness doesn't solve all of the problems. Yes, you can choose to try to have a positive outlook on things, but if your brain isn't capable, if you're not capable of giving 100% that day, if you just don't have it in you to lighten up and brighten the mood, you only have 1%, you're not going to use that 1% to choose happiness. I can tell you that right now. You're going to use that 1% to try your best to survive the day. You're going to use that to try and cook a meal. You're going to use that to try and get up and go to your class or go to work. You're going to try and get things done. Because even when you're depressed and you're in those states where you just can't do anything, trust me, deep down somewhere in you, you still want to try. You want so hard to have the energy and the gung-ho attitude of let's do this, let's get up, let's try, let's make it through the day. We're going to at least get one thing done, maybe, hopefully. That's all we could ask for. And sometimes you don't get to it. Sometimes your 10% only feels like 5, and sometimes your 5% only feels like 0, and then some days you don't have anything. And that's okay, as long as you can keep yourself in a safe headspace of it's temporary. And that's way easier said than done, especially being someone who is a survivor of attempted suicide and someone who understands how suicidal ideation occurs and how it becomes natural just to sit here and think dying doesn't mean anything. That's just as natural as breathing in and breathing out. The thought of dying isn't scary anymore. And when you get to that point, it's really hard to ask for help, to not hurt yourself. I'm also someone who has self-harmed in the past. Again, I'm going to do a separate video on triggers, self-harm, and the darker side of things, including information about suicide and my experiences with it. However, I do want to slightly touch on those topics in this video just for context, but I promise you that there are better days. And there's days now even that I still have the thoughts that shouldn't be there, but I seek help. Even my therapist just told me the other day, if you feel like you're sinking too low and you're getting pulled under and you're drowning in it, just tell yourself that you'll at least drive yourself to the ER before you do anything else. If you make the rule that you have to do something first, that usually helps. So I've made it a rule for myself, if I start feeling those deep, dark thoughts, I have to drive to the ER first. Before I get to do anything else I want to do, I have to drive to the ER. Because at least if you're there, you can get professional help and say, I'm just trying to keep myself safe, so I drove myself here. Another important aspect about depression is that, again, it is something that is genetic. It can run in families. My mom and my grandma both had depression. Here I am with depression. Hopefully my brother does better than we are. However, I do think he has anxiety already, but that's okay because mental health is still part of overall health, and that means there's things you can do to stay healthy and help yourself cope and mitigate the negativity. One thing that I always like to do, at least in my head, I'm trying to work on doing it out loud because I have heard and read that it does help more if you do it out loud, but speaking in the third person. And this means talking to yourself as in saying like, Aaliyah, you can get up today. Aaliyah, you will go to work. Aaliyah is going to do a great job on her test. Things like that. Because it reinforces your brain to know that you're capable and that you're good. And I can't explain the exact science behind why the third person works in that way, but it's something to do with the fact of making it personal, but directed at yourself as if you were someone else. It's giving praise without just saying I, because a lot of the I thoughts we have when we're in depressive states are very negative. I can't do this. I am not capable. I'm worthless. Things like that. But if you say, Aaliyah is capable, Aaliyah is not worthless, it's like you're being told by someone else, and for whatever reason your brain grabs onto that more. Another thing that I would suggest doing is asking yourself, is there proof for me feeling the way that I do? And this could be for any situation. It also helps me with my anxiety, but I feel like it helps me more with my depression because a lot of my thoughts are very negative, and most of the time there's no proof. If I'm thinking I'm worthless, there are many reasons why I'm not. There are people I'm living for, there's a job I'm living for, goals I have that I've not reached yet, and things, so many things I've accomplished so far in my life. I'm not worthless, and I can rationalize that and say that out loud, but that doesn't mean that the thoughts and the feelings of being worthless aren't still there. However, I just listed that not one thing proves the fact that I'm worthless. And for many other things, you can do that too, for feelings of no one cares about me, or all my friends don't like me. I'm sure you can think of several reasons why they do, and very few examples of tangible evidence that they don't. And that helps remind you, hey, these thoughts in my head are thoughts in my head. They're not my reality. They're not what's really happening. And that's one step forward in overcoming and changing the way your mentality is, because a lot of what depression comes down to is the thoughts. It's not the feeling tired, feeling hungry, not feeling hungry, the anger, the sadness. Those are all aspects, but where they're coming from is the pain and the hurt inside and the things we're telling ourselves in our heads. If there's anything that this video does for you, I really hope that it opens your eyes and makes you want to have more conversations about depression and the things that go along with it, and that it opened your eyes to the fact that it's not what you think it is, or what many outlets or media or people describe it as. And again, I'm totally open to talking about anything. Please feel free to reach out. I'd rather you have your questions answered than be left in the dark. And thank you for taking the time to watch these videos. Next week, I'm hopefully going to get out a video on binge eating, which is something that I experience. However, I've not been diagnosed, and therefore that one will be very much me just chatting because I'm not sure. And we'll see when that will come out, because one of my best friends is graduating and I'm gonna be there, so congrats on her bachelor's. Again, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Please, if you see something, say something, help people out, ask the question. If you think something's wrong or you're worried about somebody, say something. Don't be silent about it. And again, I appreciate all of you for watching. It really means the world to me, and I hope you spread this information with your loved ones and the people around you and get the conversation going, because the more we talk about it, the more we can do about it.
Thank you all.